Two things happened during the 12 days of Christmas this year. First, Zhang won Asian Celebrity of the Year. This meant that he appeared on several screens in Times Square during the New Year's festival, when huge numbers of people gathered there from all over North America. This is a huge success for an artist who remains blacklisted, canceled, and denied justice in his home country since 3 years ago. Not only that, but it is surely the prelude to future success. These screens are some of the most coveted advertising space in the entire world, particularly during this festival. Their price is well beyond the ability of someone with no industry support to purchase. The positive impact this will have on his career prospects going forward cannot be overstated. Secondly, Sunkyun committed suicide after being hounded by the media, mistreated by the police, and abandoned by the Korean entertainment industry. I could not help remembering that it was not so long ago Zhang admitted he had considered suicide, during the height of the scandal against him. Understandably enough, given what he was subjected to. But the same was true for Sunkyun. Indeed, his response was so much the reasonable one that it is also clearly what his enemies wanted. Sunkyun was as well beloved, as talented, and indeed he is only the latest in a long line of brilliant artists who have ended their own lives. The fact of Zhang's comeback happening in the same week as Sunkyun's demise struck me to the core. What particularly struck me was that these two artists are equally beloved in my country. Indeed, Sunkyun was, I think, slightly more well-known. I didn't pay much attention to Parasite, but many people did. Many people I knew loved it. Lee's performance is no small part of the reason why. He went beyond simply portraying a specific character to communicate truths of the human condition. His character is every father in every country, faced with a world that neither cares about him nor his family. Despite how many people claim they value family, there are many fathers in the world like him. Many who face the same choices that character did, and many who choose as he did for the same reasons he did. I may have already known the truths that Parasite communicated going in, but many, many people in my country did not. It's easy to not know, especially when knowing would make you feel obligated to change your behavior. Word of Honor wasn't supposed to go viral, either in China or in the United States. Dame usually doesn't get much attention in China, and that's why it has largely been allowed to exist. Despite the love that often goes into the original work, the dramas are often lackluster in quality, but Word of Honor was an exception to that. Americans, as a general rule, don't watch C-drama. Most people won't touch media that isn't in English, much less actually from a different country, and not intended for an American audience. We have plenty of shows produced in our country to choose from, and British television fills in the gaps. But 2021 was an exceptional year in many ways, not least because everyone was at home watching TV in a desperate attempt to escape the still ongoing horror of COVID. The other reason is that somehow all the major Western IPs managed to drop the ball during said global pandemic. This wasn't just bad luck. The problems which would eventually cause the writers and actors unions to strike were already becoming apparent. Fantasy fans were looking for something better, and they found it in Word of Honor. Indeed, Zhang's performance spoke deeply to the American experience at that time, such that even those who didn't typically watch fantasy found it moving. We all felt abandoned and mistreated by our country's leaders. We all suddenly had the experience of becoming responsible for the deaths of our loved ones. Many of us had to power through pain and weakness in order to provide for those harder hit than ourselves. The previous few years, and especially the events early in 2021, had shown us that more than a few of our fellow citizens no longer agreed with the principles our nation was founded on. In such a diverse society, agreement with those founding principles was one of the few ways we could determine who to trust. Many of us, like Zhou Zishu, needed to find a new way to determine who is trustworthy. It was the right show at the right time, something neither the actors nor showrunners could have known when they made it. For many Americans, Word of Honor was the first piece of Chinese media they had watched, period. But while Zhang Zhehan's fans came to his defense, both in response to attacks against him by Chinese media and in response to right-wing attacks on Word of Honor within America, it was abundantly clear that Lee Sunkyun's fans were nowhere to be seen during his scandal. Korea's netizens turned against him, manipulated by the media and industry. People in other countries seemed to have been unaware of what was happening. Many more Americans have been longtime watchers of South Korean media. K-pop and K-drama are a large part of youth culture today. But this hasn't translated into an awareness of what is happening within the industry. And I don't think that's accidental. I think many people are purposefully unaware, because it's so obvious that if they peer behind the curtain, they won't like what they find. Again, it's easy to not know, when knowing would make you feel obligated to change your behavior. We call celebrities idols for a reason. It's easy to let yourself forget that they are people. People with feelings, thoughts, ambitions, preferences, and personality quirks. People capable of making mistakes, and who deserve the presumption of innocence until they are proven guilty. People who can desire affection, and who can be hurt deeply by negative comments. It's easy, too, to forget that the internet is not your diary. People will say things on the internet even with their real name attached, which they would never say in person. But the person reading the comment is experiencing it as if you posted it on a bulletin board. What happened to these artists and others is not solely the fault of fans. I am not saying this because I place all the blame at your feet. I say this instead to help you realize your power. The robber barons who control the industry are not going to stop being money-grubbing and amoral. The press is not going to stop making clickbait. The police are not going to suddenly stop being unnecessarily cruel, and the courts are not suddenly going to stop being corrupt. But you have the power to save lives, in spite of these forces. You can tell your favorite star that you are with them no matter what. You can take the small risk of drawing criticism, especially in an online environment where no one can physically harm you. Stars are not so powerful that this message doesn't mean the world to them when they are facing false accusations and the cruelty of others, just as much as it meant the world to me when I was facing a similar situation. Your words have power. All words do. Choose them carefully.